And frankly, it's great to be next door to a state that has Haley Barbour as governor. Haley was my partner in developing the contract with America when he was RNC chair in a great moment. I have to say, because I don't want to get in trouble now with all you Texans, it's also great to be in a state next door with Perry. But I really want to talk to you for a few minutes about where we are. And this is not a speech that I would have given a year ago or a year and a half ago. And I've thought about it a lot, and I just finished and sent to my publisher at Regularly a new book that will be out in May called To Save America. And the subtitle of it is Stopping Obama's Secular Socialist Machine. And I don't think I would have imagined when Calista and I went to the inaugural in 2009 that we'd be where we are tonight. It's really quite remarkable. President-elect Obama chose for his inaugural address a phrase from Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, a new birth of freedom, which comes from the Gettysburg Address. A document which, by the way, also says, one nation under God. And part of what I'm struck with after a year and a half of watching President Obama is how he only reads parts of things. And he picks out a couple of words that sort of feel right, and then he pretends that he understands the rest of it. But he doesn't. The Republican Party was founded on freedom, not serfdom. The Republican Party was founded on the work ethic, not the redistribution ethic. The Republican Party was founded on defending America, not hiring lawyers for terrorists. And I think we're at an unusual moment in American history. And what I'm about to say, I wouldn't even said to you in December. That's how much this has all evolved and all come together. Last year, the president proved they had a machine. When I use the term secular socialist machine, I mean that. And he proved they had a machine when they got $787 billion with no elected member having read the bill. Now, no taxation without representation, a term Obama might remember from history, which was used by the Americans to explain why the British monarchy was unacceptable, actually means that representation has to know what they are taking your money for. So, if you have spending with no representative knowing what it is, you don't have representative self-government. You have a machine. And that was the first signal that this is very different. This is the most radical administration in American history. And I began to realize after a year of watching it that if you think about the group that meets together in the White House, their experience is the machine politics of Chicago, the corruption of Springfield, and the radicalism of Alinsky. And it comes together in a format, and then they meet with their two colleagues, Pelosi and Reid, and you have a perfect, unrepresentative left-wing machine dedicated to a secular socialist future. And what really got me to understand how different this period is, I believe this is the most serious conflict since the 1850s. And the reason I say that is, the American people by last summer began to send a signal. They went to town hall meetings, they formed tea parties, the polling numbers got worse and worse. And the answer of the Democrats was to cancel town hall meetings, lie about the tea parties, and tell all their members to ignore the polls. Then they lost Virginia and New Jersey. Exactly as in 1993 they had lost Virginia and New Jersey. And I thought, gosh, that would be a signal. Maybe they should slow down and think about this. And they accelerated. Yeah. And they wrote this grotesque pair of bills in the House and Senate that were utterly incomprehensible, the largest increase in government in our lifetime, absolutely unenforceable, and represented a kind of ludicrous big government, big bureaucracy, high tax, micromanagement, Washington Senate health system, utterly incapable of working. I mean, no rational person could believe that the current federal government could implement this. At the Center for Health Transformation, we had published a book last August by Jim Frobe called Stop Paying the Crooks. And we thought that was a fairly clear. I mean, look, when you talk to guys who have been educated at Columbia and Harvard, you try to get the language down to a rhythm And what we said in that book, which we absolutely stand by, and the New York Post did an article this week that makes it even more absurd, is we said the federal government is such a totally bad, incompetent manager of the health system that in Medicare and Medicaid annually they pay between $70 and $120 billion a year to crooks. Now, we're not talking about marginal mistakes. We're talking about 5 pizza parlors in Miami that are certified as HIV/AIDS transfusion centers. We're talking about a dentist in New York who files 983 procedures a day. We're talking about, as the New York Post reported last week, people who stand at the subway station recruiting Medicaid people, put them in a van, send them to a dentist who cleans their teeth and charges the government for 4 or 5 procedures under Medicaid. I mean, the kind of stuff that you can't make this stuff up. The Russian mafia dominates durable medical equipment in Los Angeles. I mean, you can't make the federal government is so totally incompetent. They tell you they have a very low cost of administration because they just write checks no matter how stupid. Now, I mean, you can have a very inexpensive administration if you're determined to know nothing. And that's the group they want to expand to handle all of American health care. So you would have thought, at some point they'd have said, this is not going to work. So then we got to the final crisis. The polling numbers got worse. Historians will someday write that the longer Obama talked, the less the American people believed. And I'm not saying that to be negative about him. I'm saying it to describe the polling data that showed conclusively that the longer he talked about health, the weaker the bill got. Because the more he talked, the more people paid attention. The more they paid attention, the more they thought this bill was really bad. Now, and this is the problem of trying to have a great orator sell a bad product, is you draw attention to it. And so finally we got to the great, I thought, what I would have said to you analytically, you know, if I was doing Hannity or something, and they said, what does all this mean? I would have said to you that the Massachusetts election was the decisive one. And people all over the country spontaneously rallied. In the last 14 days, Scott Brown raised $10 million on the internet, of which I would guess 9,900,000 came from people he'd never met. Because they were trying to send a signal. Now ask yourself, if the signal is Edward Kennedy's seat is captured by a Republican who's opposed to Obamacare, how could you get a better signal? Okay? So there's a moment of exaltation. I remember I was in Cincinnati with Rob Portman, who's going to be a great U.S. Senator, the night after the victory in Massachusetts. And we're all excited and we're all positive. We think to ourselves, if the Democratic Party members have now heard from the Tea Parties, from the town hall meetings, from the polls, from Virginia, from New Jersey, and now from Massachusetts, surely they will understand that there's a message here. And they did. It took them about a week. For about a week they were stymied, and then they sat in a room at the White House and said, you know what? We're going to run over the entire country. And they decided to ram through the health bill, no matter what the American people felt. And by the way, as recently as early last week, by about 54 to 34, the country wants the bill repealed. Then they don't get it. Now,